Rice and beans. Okay, kids, we have had to come to an end of this beautiful set.
So we are tired.
It's not about this.
This is the inside account of a week that brought the Rainbow Nation to its knees.
Right, essentially trying to inculcate into this. Welcome to the Progressive Mind Show. My name is Senna, aka Alinko. Today is Monday special. This is a Monday special edition of Black History Month. We are used to, of course, our usual schedule for the show is Tuesdays between 6 to 8 p.m. But we are doing a special Monday edition to officially begin Black History Month. We know February is Black History Month in the United States of America, and as a tradition on this platform, we curate shows and dialogues that will be peculiar to this month. And I'm sure other organizations are doing events. Some are having dialogues such as this in all parts of the country, and it is a great time to be coming your way once again to indulge. We are live on Facebook and YouTube. Whilst you are there, please share. For those who are on Facebook, share and like the page as well. Invite your friends to be part of this very, very important topic concerning the diaspora, navigating through the cultures of the African, Caribbean, and African American here in the United States and elsewhere. And so please make sure that you are liking the page on Facebook and sharing it to friends and loved ones who are interested or who would be interested in this particular conversation. And of course, when you're on YouTube, you can like and subscribe to our page as well. This evening, we have great people in our midst who are going to be engaging with us. Looks like we have our other guests. Okay, here we go. We have Natalie in the house. So we would go straight to the point. Again, remember, this is a special edition of the Progressive Mind Show. It's a Monday special, and hopefully we'll be here tomorrow to continue. Depending on how this conversation goes, we probably will be here tomorrow at 6 p.m. to continue it, or we might do a replay. So please bear with us. Tuesday's show is still ongoing. We're just doing a special today. And for those who would like to call in, the phone number, we just got an email today that there might be a technical glitch. So if you want to ring in, I would probably have to give you an alternative number for those who want to call in and share your opinion or just contribute to the show. However, if you, of course, you can send in your comments on Facebook and YouTube. We'll be able to see them and put it out there. This evening, I have, I'll start from the top. Chantal Watson. She is a project manager and a host of In the Zone podcast. In the Zone podcast. Chantal, you're welcome to the Progressive Mind Show for the first time.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to have this conversation, a conversation I've been wanting to dive into for a very long time. So appreciate you including me in here.
Awesome. And then next to Chantal Watson is, for the purposes of this show, we'll just call her Sean. Okay, so Natalia Stevenson is a manager at Roots Reggae in Florida. No,
it's called Coffee Radio.
Okay. I don't know where the roots came from. Coffee Radio.
Yeah, Coffee Radio, just like the artist coffee.
Okay.
Yes, it's great to be here again, and it will definitely be a pleasure engaging with you guys tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Natalie, for answering the call. And lastly, we have Brother Uri Ben Adiel. You're muted, brother. Yes, thank you. He's a spiritual advisor also out there in Atlanta. Brother, thank you so much for making it to the show today.
Yes, likewise, man. I'm appreciative for the invite, and I'm more excited about what's to come, and so many things to be able to learn from all the great individuals that you invited, but also from the audience as well. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. We'll jump straight into it, and let's do this. And I'll be very honest. As an African, when I did not ever know about Black History Month. When I came here, early parts. I mean, when I came here, when I came into this country, I would say it took me about 5 to 6 years to hear about it. I don't know if because social media was not as popular, a few years ago, but it took me a long time to know, to even hear about Black History Month, let alone learn of its significance to Black people in this country. And of course, not only Black people, but the aura, the spirit, and the strength surrounding Black History Month and how it transcends not only into this country, but across the globes. And it took so many years for me to begin to grasp it gradually. And also, I would confess that Black History Month helped me in a way to understand my own culture as an African, to learn more about my own culture, and it sparked that interest more. And because the honest truth is that a lot of Africans were not taught our history in detail as it was supposed to. But that notwithstanding, Sean, what does Black history mean to you as an African American?
Wow, that is such a loaded question. I think Black, I think at a high level, it means pride, right? I've grown up in Chicago. I live in Chicago, went to Chicago public schools, and that was really the only time of year that we would be immersed in any history that related to people who look like me as African Americans. I spent much of the time learning European history and maybe some South American history, but not much time except the month of February. Looking at the Martin Luther Kings and the Malcolm X's and the Harriet Tubmans and the Rosa Parks, right? That would really be the only time of year that I'd be able to learn about people who look like me. So it's important in that way because representation is important, right? If you're only learning about what white people have done for this country, you start to think that your people or people who look like you didn't contribute. And that was the time of year you learn what the contributions of Black people were and find some pride in that.
Thank you so much for sharing. Now go to Brother Uri. How significant is Black history to you? And would you share the same sentiment as Sean just shared?
Yeah, so my perspective on it is a little different, and not to be an antagonist at all or to oppose without reason, but because I did grow up in a very conscious household with a very conscious father and siblings, and just everybody around me was very conscious as it relates to this Black history in general. The Black history that we received in school was very watered down, and it was just a microcosm of all of the actual works and the truth that, you know, Africans and African Americans and or Black people all around the world had done. So oftentimes I found myself in school and in places like that actually doing a lot of correcting and educating and injecting truth where it was not being really placed, and it was more of like the same old narrative that was being projected, and I see the effects and the watered down effects that it had on our people at whole, which caused us to have less confidence of who we were as a person, as a people, which much of it really started with beginning in slavery. And I understood much beyond before what, you know, who we were before slavery in many different aspects and cultures and the vast history that we had. So it was really more like same old radio, same old tune being played. So not necessarily the same type of impact that it had on my life.
Thank you, Brother Ura, for sharing. Natalia, you're muted, just in case, just FYI. Okay, go ahead, Natalia. As a Caribbean, Jamaican-born lady, born and raised in Jamaica, of course, you and I came here, but did you ever know of Jamaica? I mean, know of Black History Month while in Jamaica? And to you as a Caribbean in America or Caribbean American, what is the significance of Black History Month to you?
Yes, so Black History Month has always been celebrated in Jamaica. Okay. It has always been a part of our culture. The only difference between, I'm going to say, Jamaica and America is that our history that was taught in school is Black history. Like everything that we're taught about our history. As you know, we have different type of culture, and that's why we still have like real connection to our African roots, because they teach us in school about the Maroons and everything from the start of slavery to the end of slavery. And as Marcus Mosiah Garvey say, or Bob Marley always say, if you don't know your past, then you can't know your present. You will have no idea of how you are going forth in this world. So history has always been a part of our culture. I mean, even the baby of the baby can explain and tell you about, Black history, because it's a part of us. But they also, in school, they also teach us European history. But just in having full understanding of your own history make you a stronger person.
Well, thank you so much. And that's something new for me. I just learned something. I didn't know Black History Month was taught, or Black history was taught a lot in detail in Jamaica, just as you said. That's very different from Africa when it comes to us Africans.
Yes, and that's why if you were to talk to like a Rastafarian, they go like super deep into all these different histories and ties, and it's because we're so educated about all this, the events, everything about Black history.
So you were taught about in detail about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Reverend Jesse Jackson, some of the civil rights leaders, Harriet Tubman.
Yep.
And and the civil rights. Really?
Yes. We do
Wow.
both American history and European history because we have to understand what the British did,
Mm.
especially in like World War One, Two. We know all that history. They teach all that in school.
I don't know why they didn't teach us. I wish this is something that I would like to explore, and I hope that in course of time we can have Aloysius on the show. So to our listeners, I mean, you may have seen 5 people, 4 people on the flyer. So we are expecting one of our guests, Aloysius, to be part of to join us, and hopefully he can give us. He's Nigerian American, so hopefully he knows something about Black History Month being taught in Africa, Black history being taught in Africa. But to be honest, this is something that has eluded a lot of us, especially folks growing up on the west side of Africa. We this Black history was not taught us at all, and so thanks for that remark, Natalia. But Sean, you have lived all your life in this country. I'm sure you probably have traveled elsewhere, but for the most part, what has been your experience with Africans and Caribbeans in this country?
Another loaded question. Here's what I will say.
Okay.
To put it politely, it's been contentious, right? When I was in high school, I went to high school with there were Mexicans and Black people, and they were like this small subset of Haitian students. And maybe rightfully so, maybe not rightfully so, they weren't very inclusive, right? They stayed very insulated. And when they did talk to us, it was really rude for all intents and purposes, right? I did hear a little bit about us being lazy and a lot of other stereotypes. And I've come across that, speaking and I'll be very transparent. Like I don't have a lot of interactions with Africans, right? I've met a handful of Nigerians and Ghanaians, and I have met some Caribbean people over time. And usually I get some question about, and I don't know how transparent we can be on this show, right? I don't know how
we can be as transparent as you want, 100% transparent.
I'll tell this story, right? I was in a cab with a gentleman who was Nigerian, and it was just me and him, and he was talking. And then he starts telling me how big of a whore American women are. I said, "Oh, this is fascinating. Tell me more about that, because I'm the person I'm going to probe you. I'm going to get all the information."
Did he know you were African American?
I assume from my accent, he could tell I was not African.
Okay.
I'm assuming he did, right? And he just goes on and on about how African women are, basically more pristine and they're more chaste, but American women are just big old whores. And by the time he dropped me off, he decided he wanted to ask me for my number, which I turned to him and said, "You just sat here for the last 20 minutes telling me how big of a whore American women are. And I find it curious you would ask an American woman for her phone number. What's your expectation in this situation?" Clearly not marriage, right? Like, what are you trying to do? So I think there is a huge bias from the Caribbeans and the Africans toward African Americans. Much of it is, and I'm sure we'll dig into that, right? I'm a firm believer that much of the rhetoric, not only from Caribbeans and Africans toward African Americans, but in reverse, it's just a lot of white supremacist language that we're just spewing out, right? Things that we have heard over years coming from white people and our own people that we're just regurgitating back at people we really have no true knowledge of. And I can speak for myself. My knowledge of Africa and what it's like to be African and interact with them are very, very limited. And I have participated in some of that bigoted language until I've grown as a person, grown more of a perspective, and realized how ignorant I am on what the experience of Africans have been in this language and in their own country. So I do think it takes recognizing how you participate in white supremacy in order to stop participating in that kind of bigotry towards people who look like you, who have a shared history as you. Yes, I didn't come from Jamaica or the ABC Islands, but at the end of the day, all of us started in Africa and we have that shared history.
Thank you. I would come back to some more experiences. And so you will say that in totality, this has been that one experience was the more vivid one.
That was probably the more recent one for sure. But there's always some conversation about how we have no culture, which is totally false, right? That Black people do have a culture. How we don't have our own language, how we don't have our own food, how it's just a lot of ignorant rhetoric, right? That you hear, how we don't want to get education, how we don't want to make money, how racism is in our heads. Like there's a lot of rhetoric that has come from African and Caribbeans that are just really problematic. Yeah.
Okay. Do you literally hear people say these things to you, or you directly, just like your recent experience? If you say recent experience, first of all, this year, last year, how recent was this?
Oh, the one with the cow drive? That was like in the last 5 years. Yeah.
It was the last 5 years. Between the last 5 years till now, have you had these types of experiences? Now, maybe not as close to this, but anything, troublesome.
I will say in the last 5 years, again, like I said, I'm not surrounded by Africans constantly, right? So my conversations are limited at best. Now, I will say the last conversation I had with African, and I was with yourself and Senyo and Aloysius, right? Well, we had a really robust conversation about the relationship between Africans and African Americans. And it was a very transparent conversation. I did not leave that conversation feeling like there were ignorant things said to me. So no, that would be an excellent example of us be able to sit from different parts of the diaspora and really being able to understand each other's perspectives without having to throw back and forth those kind of bigoted perspectives. So I will say definitely recently, I have not experienced that. It's been several years since that's happened.
Thank you so much, Sean. And you did mention some rhetorics out there that we would like you to, we'll dig into that. We'll come to the whys and whatnot. And this is why we have this platform. Brother Uri, before we come to Natalia, Brother Uri, as an African-American man, of course, you mentioned how conscious your household has been, but outside of that consciousness, which probably, outside of that, what has been your experience with Africans or Caribbeans?
Yep, so that's a hard question to kind of ask because you really can't go outside of the consciousness, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
Because with that consciousness, it has put me in a role when I interact with almost anybody, but especially people that are on the continent of Africa. It has put me more of an educational and leadership role. So it's not that oftentimes I find myself on a receiving end in the sense of, I may ask, I know how to ask specific questions that would, number one, indicate that I have knowledge as it relates to their culture and history, which then now it's a different conversation. So I'm not just saying, okay, where you from? Well, they say Ghana, and I say, okay, well, do you speak Tree, or are you by the Volta region? So now it already puts it like, oh, well, you know about that. So then, and I may ask particular questions, and then I'll give insight and share certain things. So it now puts me into a conversation to where now they feel some camaraderie. They feel like they know that I understand them a little bit more. They understand that, hey, my father had his honeymoon in Ghana. Yeah, he had it here. Boom, boom, boom. My cousin actually did it. So it's a different interaction almost every time. And I often, again, find myself on the educating end, which is always a giving and receiving. But because this has been something that's been a part of my life and the consciousness is my life, and I'm a huge Pan-Africanist, then where there's a saying in the scriptures that said, where there's understanding, there is no anger. So when we find understanding and mutual understanding, and I understand their culture, they understand mine, then, or if one just understands, then it can mitigate any type of conflict that can arise from a misunderstanding or lack of understanding.
Okay. Well said, Brother Uri. You thank God you were conscious. You've been able to navigate through some of these cultural differences. However, I'm sure you have brothers who are not as conscious, friends and whatnot. Have you heard of their own challenges when it comes to dealing with other Black ethnic groups, especially Black and brown communities?
Yes, most of which would be just a lack of communication, a lack of, you know, camaraderie, a lack of like seeing that individual as, you know, somebody that is in unison with one another, right?
When you do when you do hear from your brothers or just peers talk about their challenges with the diaspora community members, when they do tell you, are they most of them are they positive most of the time when it comes to African American brothers and sisters within your network interacting with Africans and African Americans? When you hear their experiences, are they positive? Are they like, just like you said, do they seem to have the same experience that you have because of your consciousness?
Because a lot of the people that are around me do have a similar, you know, background.
Okay.
Most of them, but there are some cases where people, the most reports I get will be more so just indifferent. Just again, just not a lack. It's not like a I'm black, you black. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I see you. It's more like it's like they treated me just like they would treat anybody else, as if I was just outside of their culture. So that's what I would get most of the time from the reports that I would get.
Okay, so from what Sean just shared, would you say that is a real reality, or this is just some people just being too overly sensitive? As an African American living in this country.
Yeah, great question. I think it's a real reality. I don't think it's as frequent as what we may see on the internet. As human beings, we're negative biased. So if I go get my oil changed 110 times, I'm probably not going to tell many people that oil change is just a great place. But if that one time that they did, you know, mess up with my car, everybody and their mama gonna know not to go. So we're negative bias. So we blow up things that happen to be negative. So it seems as if it's more frequent than it is, but it does in fact happen, as what Sean was saying.
Okay, thank you, Natalia. Before you came to America, what was your perception of African Americans here in America?
I can't say I had a negative perception because I had families living here long before I came to America. And also because Jamaica is a tourist destination, we were always coming across, you know, people from everywhere in the world. So because you're used to seeing these people and talking with these people, you eventually find out that everybody has different personalities and you can't use one person to judge an entire group of people. So I'm not going to say we had any bad or, you know, perspective. Because just like y'all probably hear, we will say Jamaica Irish. So we look at things a little bit more relaxed. You know, come here, feel all right. Maybe when they come to the US, they probably might develop some biases. It's just like, you know, we tell people all the time, the motto in Jamaica is out of many one people. That means we have people from every single nation living there and we live as one. We don't have racism there. The only thing we have there is classism, the rich against the poor. So if you are white and poor, you're just poor. We don't look on your color. So if you're an American there and you're rich, you're just a wealthy American. We don't really look at you and say, okay, you're a wealthy Black American. We just look at you as being a wealthy person. So it's kind of hard for us to really look at biases because of the way we were grown. Because if we did have biases, then we would have biases against the British, because they were the ones that enslaved us. But we did not. We fought for, you know, our freedom. when we were enslaved and cutting the cane field and doing their work, and we had to turn around and fight the British for them to get out of Jamaica so that we took over our country. If we were to be biased, we would definitely be biased against them, but we're not. We still open them with open arms. The only problem with us as Black people, and I mean, Bob Marley has been preaching it for years. We need to learn how to unite. We all have been brainwashed. We have all been brainwashed in the sense that, okay, we think one Black person is better than another, or a Black person is less than another, when in all essence, we aren't.
Right.
We are all Black people.
Right. I think that, no, it's a great point. And I think you'll go into the solutions, which we will get into. But thanks for a great submission. We truly appreciate it. I had an experience in Jamaica. That was the first time I'd ever been there. And I was at, firstly, Natalie, let's switch it. The perception of Jamaicans to to Africans. How do Jamaicans or Caribbeans in general perceive Africans?
So Jamaican perceive African based on what they see in the media. And it's the same thing. It's the same
thing. Is that negative or positive?
It is negative. And it's the same thing with America. They only see the negative. In recent years, I'm not going to say recent years, because I remember when Bob Marley did his shows in Africa and you see crowds of people. They were people who looked normal, like, every other Black person that I saw around me in Jamaica. But yet still, if the media is showing us anything, they are showing us poor, kids in deplorable state, nothing that's good. It was somewhat different in my case because my father had the Rastafarian belief, so he kind of instilled that in us. So we had a different perception of what the media was putting out to us. And, just being exposed to other things, that's when we kind of, develop like a mistrust in the media to say, maybe Africa is not as bad as it seems, because then we would have African teacher. One of my best math teachers, she was from Africa. She was beautiful, smart, and her family they were awesome. And then we looked and we were like, how did they tell us that everybody in Africa is poor? Yet still, my math teacher, Mrs. Walker, is beautiful. She had her tribal marks and everything, but they were so beautiful on her. Okay. And she was even part of, teaching us more about Africa. And she was like, don't listen to the media. Africa is not like that.
Okay. So you had somewhat a negative view of Africans based on what was shown, which would be poverty, right? But it wasn't like, oh, they're lazy people and they're crazy and they're wild. It wasn't that type of.
No, it wasn't that.
Okay, now go ahead.
And but then again, it's the same thing. The media show Americans about Jamaica, Kingston, and it's terrible and it's horrible. Kingston has two parts. You have the uptown, which the super rich people live, and then you have downtown Kingston. That's where all the more poorer class live. But one thing I can say about the poor class in Jamaica, even if the outside of their property looks, tattered, and if you were to go behind those tattered walls, you probably see a mansion around there. They are very, what should I say? Cleanly. They like to have their things looking good and stuff like that. So it's a lot of misconceptions out there. And not all Jamaicans are Rastafarian, and we don't all smoke weed. And just to add to that, yes. Jamaican men don't even like their women smoke at all. So there's no way they could push that motive on us that, all Jamaicans smoke weed, because Jamaican men do not like a woman that smokes.
But they themselves majority smoke.
Not majority. That's where you go wrong. That's another misconception too.
Okay.
Because in my family, nobody smokes. Majority of my friends, they don't smoke either. So that right there show you the misconception that's put out there.
Okay. So now when Jamaicans do travel here now, or Caribbeans travel here, do you think that whatever perception they may have, when it comes to the African Americans, do you think the narrative changes because of the consistent negative news, news information that is put out there on mainstream media? Do you think that the Jamaicans in the diaspora begin to develop a certain kind of outlook, negative outlook towards the African American community? Do you think that's a reality here in the diaspora with the Caribbean community?
I'm going to say that negative outlook is probably minimizing. The more people get integrated, interacting with each other, I kind of see that minimizing than what it previously was.
Okay.
And I think it's because we're starting to have more conversation. It's just like I remember when I came to the US and I was speaking, and somebody said to me, "You don't look Jamaican." And I was like, how does a Jamaican look? How do you expect me to look as a Jamaican?
Right.
Then they're like, "Oh, you don't talk Jamaican." And I was like, how does a person talk Jamaican? It's the misconception. They teach us in school English, British English.
Okay.
And that's why we're able to speak clear enough for Americans to at least understand
Okay, great. Thank you so much. If you just joined us, this is the Progressive Mind Show, and today we are doing a special. We call it Black History Month Monday Special. Black History Month Monday Special. Every Black History Month for the past 7 years or so, we dedicate certain peculiar programs in the context of Black History Month, just so we can as a people learn more about who we are, where we're from, and where we must be going as a collective. And so if you just join us on Facebook, please like the page. You can share it within your network, so your friends and your family members can also be part of this dialogue. Also on YouTube, like the page and subscribe to it, so anytime we come on, you can be part of us. We're a 501c3 platform, and so donations is what sustains us. Feel free to donate to us. This is also the tax season, so your donations are tax deductible. Support us as we continue to build our communities through this dialogue. And I'm here with Sean Watson, who is herself a radio show host, a podcast show host. Uri is a spiritualist, a spiritual advisor, and Natalia Stevenson is a radio manager at a radio station called Coffee Radio Station, and she's also professionally, I know she's also data intelligence analyst, something like that. But anyway, we have had these discussions, and today is February 5th, 2024. I want to mention we've done 37 minutes past 6 p.m. The experience that I wanted to share with you, Natalia, earlier, is that when I went to Jamaica, I had this. I was walking around. I think I was just strolling around the beach, and there was this guy. You know how the guys at the beach, sell stuff to you, at the resort, and they kind of trying to get you to buy stuff. So he tried to sell something to me, and of course, to be honest, when I went to Jamaica, I'm like, wait, why am I here? This is like Ghana. I didn't feel like I was on vacation. To be honest, I mean, I went there just because my ex-wife wanted us to go, and so. And to be honest, I'm like, wait, this is just like me in any village or any part of Accra or a village in Ghana, whatever. So I'm going through the experiences. I'm admiring the people. I'm liking the vibe. I'm saying we say Yemen in Ghana. So when I say Yemen, it was almost the same thing. But this guy came up to me and he wanted to sell something. To be honest, I wasn't ready to buy anything. I'm not a typical tourist who is ready to buy. I'm a typical African who's only there because my ex-wife wanted me to. So please, I'm not ready to. I'm not a tourist, not trying to buy nothing. He went back and forth, and then later, when he was walking past, he looked at me with the corner of his eye and called me African boy. He said it with this attitude, which gave me the impetus that perhaps there is a bad blood, or there is not so much of a good relationship with Africans and Jamaicans. Or perhaps he called me an African boy as though he is not of the African origin or does not share an African heritage. So it gave me an idea that maybe now, because we in Ghana love Jamaicans and we think, oh, they are roots and they are very cultured like us and they love us and we like them. We love reggae. But I had a different experience. And I'm like, maybe it's not so true that Jamaicans generally love Africans and identify themselves as Africans. And I had another experience like that, right? A second experience with another guy who, once I identified myself as an African, again, his attitude was not so positive like the other nationalities, like the white people. He attended to them differently, knowing and hearing my accent, his whole vibe changed. So I think that not all Caribbeans or Jamaicans really have that vibe or connection to Africans or really actually like Africans. I think they may have something against Africans. And I don't know why. If you want to share, if you want to, respond to that, Natalia, please.
Sure. So if he was to refer to you as an African boy, it would be like when, African hiss their teeth when they go, like shugging you. Yeah, it's the same thing.
We do that a lot. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, right. So it's like a form of ignoring you or saying, okay, you probably broke and can't pay for what he's selling. So it's that's basically what he did.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's actually a bad blood.
Okay.
He probably is like, you're not no money. So you get what I'm
broke
saying?
African.
Yes, so he's like broke African. Exactly. That's what he's trying to say.
Okay.
But it's not really saying it's a bad blood.
Okay.
But with like white Americans, if they were to ask, try to sell, a lot of time the white people will just buy it just so that they can to get rid of them. But because you are just like us, you're gonna be like, okay, I'm not doing it. You can't make me do it, and there's no way I'm gonna do it. So it's the same scenario. So I don't think it's a bad blood. It's just, and that's why we have to clear up these misconceptions. So when you hear it, you know it's not necessarily something negative.
Yeah.
He's just probably saying, oh, you're broke. You ain't got no money.
And he was right. I didn't have a lot of money, so I'm not about to do all this vibe. But thank you so much, Natalia, for sharing.
But otherwise, I think you had a great experience there.
Oh, I
because
did.
When you talk to the majority, you get a different perspective, and you see that the majority has a more clearer understanding of your culture and everything.
I did, and I made friends there. There was a guy who he gave me a pen drive full of reggae music. I told him I love reggae music, and he said, when I see you the next day, I can take the money, and because I trust you. He said, I trust you as a brother, and he was very trusted. And to be honest, if I have to spend like a month away from Ghana, it would be Jamaica, because I really did feel at home. So that experience gave me something in my mind. I didn't make anything of it, but today having this conversation, and I've known you for some time, but today it clicked, and I'm like, let's have, and that's why it's important that we have this kind of conversations. So like you said, it can clear the misconceptions. So thank you so much for clearing that. We have Aloysius just joined us. And so brother Aloysius is the CEO of Akan International. Thank you so much for joining. I know you had a little bit of technicalities getting to the beginning of the show, but thanks for coming. Thanks for making it to the show. How are you doing today?
First of all, thank you for having me. I must apologize to the fine people that your guests and also the people that you have on right now for my technical difficulty. Like a true African, our power went off in our place, and we had to we had to resolve the issues, and I was able to relocate. And happy to be here with you. Thank you for having me, and I hope you can forgive me for my tardiness.
Did you say, as a typical African, your power went off?
I mean, it's the truth. Let's be honest. You know, we have roaming blackouts. We have roaming blackouts all through Nigeria, Ghana. They understand that. That's one of the biggest issues we have in Africa.
Yes.
That we are solving, and we will solve very soon.
Right. So you just had an African experience in Detroit.
In America, in Detroit. So it happens all over.
Great. Yes. In Ghana, we call it doomsaw, which means doomsaw is an Akan word, which means doom is off, saw is on, turn on. So on, off. And Nigeria is NEPA, right?
NEPA, yeah, roaming blackout.
So,
you never know when the lights come on and go on.
Right. Brother Aloysius, I'm sure you probably had a preview of what we're discussing earlier. Your experience as a Nigerian growing up in, of course, you're Nigerian-American, but coming off as a Nigerian in your communities, what was your experience with African Americans or even Caribbeans growing up in this country?
So this is a very interesting topic. I'm going to say a disclosure before I start talking. This is my experience only. I hope that other people that has this experience, they can answer it. I'm not no way going to speak for everybody. I know how everybody gets it can get very volatile because we're very emotional people. So from my experience, born into a Nigerian family in Detroit, Michigan, it's a unique experience. Why? Because my family is Nigerian in the house. We speak Igbo in the house when I was born. I didn't learn how to speak English. Really, the forming the words of English until I was about 6 years old. So I was really late to the game of speaking English. Born in America, but in a very tender age, we picked up my mother, my two sisters. We picked up and went back to Nigeria, and you can hear it from my accent. I have a twang, as they say it, and I was able to live my experience in Nigeria as a young child and impressionist child. So my first experience with America didn't come from Americans. It didn't come from people of American origin. It came from my own Nigerian background, my mother, my father, and going back to Nigeria, I'll be honest with you, propaganda, TV shows, and that's my first experience about America was that media outlet. As a child, I'm going to tell you, I was a rambunctious little boy. I loved to jump off the couch and do WWF. At that time, it's WWE now. So our whole experience about America was, think about it. After school, I would watch WWF on Saturdays and Friday night Slam, and you'll get this big, strong, huge white man tackling. All the good guys was in red and yellow, and all the bad guys was in black. Then the next experience you get is all the bad guys is cops. My mom didn't want me watching cops. Of course, when you tell a kid it's bad, what are you going to do? What you going to do? We're going to sneak and try to watch it. And that was our experience about America was cops. If you watch cops back in the 1980s, yes, I'm an 80s. Yes, I'm older. Cops portrayed African Americans very violently, very disgusting. So our first experience with just our own type of people in America was those two shows, WWE, WWF at that time, and Cops. As a little boy, that's what I think. So what you think in your mind, it forms this idea of dangerous people that the bad guys are away in black. And that's the first experience. Saying that, that's not what the experience I had when I first got to America. So as an American coming in, don't forget, my mother was, everybody knew I was an American boy. You know that when you're in Nigeria. But when you come to America, I'm an African boy all over again. So now I went from being this American kid in elementary school and first grade, first experience about America was through these crazy shows, and you want to experience American life, but you're kind of hesitant. So my first experience when I went to school in America was the ability to, how do I communicate? My accent was a tall tale that I wasn't from, or I wasn't 100% American when it comes to the culture part. Blood, maybe land-based born, yeah, maybe, but not in the cultural part. So I had an experience. Now that people looked at me outsider, it's okay. As a kid, what do kids do? They're not very nice to outsiders, and they learn that from their parents. So they use words like African booty scratcher. I can remember kids calling me that. I can remember being upset many times because I didn't understand. To this day, I don't know what the African booty scratcher means. If you know, let me know, because I don't know. But it was hurtful because it's just a word they couldn't call. Then you go to have so-called the white kids and the Caucasian kids. And yeah, I was called a nigger. Excuse my language. I actually said the N-word, excuse me. So I will use the N-word. I was called the N-word. So one end, you had me being called African booty scratcher, and the other word you had me call the N-word. Where do I find myself? I'm in the middle. I have many stories where I was crying because I wanted to be part of the crowd. I wanted to be part of this crowd, and somehow, somewhere, I found myself an outcast. What do you lean on? You lean on your parents. My mom, my dad did an incredible job just building my ego and telling me my people will be the people that loves me for who I am. One of the stories I can remember, and this is a story I kind of tell kids, is I had a kid in my class. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I was going to say, before you tell that story, I wanted to go to a comment that Sean made earlier, and then you can share, if you can, go. Then you can share that story if you don't mind. Can you hold on to that?
All right, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Aloysius, for giving us that bit much of your background and your experience with African Americans here. Sean, you mentioned a few things that I wanted you to get back to. I mean, clarify for us, or probably just respond to again, because we wanted to get into the details of it. When you talk about how did that make you feel when a Nigerian driver, Uber driver, referred to African American women in a derogatory term? How did that make you feel? Of course, negative, but I just wanted to express your personal feeling towards that.
That's a really interesting question. I don't think I've ever thought about that. I'm sure I was insulted, right? But I'm also an incredibly curious person. So saying things like that to me just spawns on more questions for me, right? One, because I'm petty and I just want you to dig the hole deeper for yourselves and be as ignorant as possible so I can internally judge you. But again, I'm also curious, right? Like, where does that come from? And I did ask him, like, well, why do you think African-American women are whores? And I don't remember exactly what he said, but he had his reasons for it and whatnot. But it made me more curious than it did insult me, because I didn't quite understand why he landed on that American women or African American women are whores. So yeah, I'm sure I was insulted, but I was more intrigued than I was anything else.
Okay. There and I'd like to of course use the opportunity to apologize on behalf of Africans, because he's Nigerian, I'm African, right? Because I mean, we shouldn't be doing this, but unfortunately we have this type of mindset, and somebody said it's due to colonialism. I'll take a few minutes to go through the comments. Colonialism, slavery, neocolonialism, all the isms and the other factors that have caused us to see each other the way we do. But the reality is that there are these rhetoric, stereotypes, all of that. Now, again, Sean, let's take the opportunity to clear that. If people really have this perception, which goes to some of the points that Aloysius shared, because and Aloysius and Natalia shared, because of what we see, what we are exposed to, what they show us on TV. For me, when I was growing up in Ghana, I saw, and I told you, I was telling you the other time, I watch more of Two Live Crew musical video than what than any positive thing any positive thing about African American. Go ahead, Aloysius.
No, I was shaking my head because it is that.
Right. So having watched a lot of Two Live Crew, where a lot of women, black women shaking their booty and all of that. Yes, I cannot directly reflect back to Zoblazo, which is a dance from the Francophone countries where is twerking, women twerk and all of that. And even Bobobo, that's a dance in the Ewe culture. It's all about booty shaking. Now, granted, they don't necessarily expose the whole booty, just like you would see in a musical clip like Two Live Crew. So do you want to speak to that? Do you think that maybe pop culture here overly sexualized Black American women, which has gone to the detriment of the community and the outlook of the community? You want to respond to that, Sean?
So I think it's twofold, right? Okay. I think I totally agree with you where the imagery that's put out there, not just in Africa, not just in the Caribbean, but even right here in the United States for Black people is one of a lot of violence, a lot of poverty, and hypersexualized, right? That is one of the stereotypes we're constantly pushing back against white people, right? They're hypersexualized in Black men and they're always hypersexual in Black women. And I don't think Two Live Crew did us any, they did us quite the disservice with their music videos, right? But I also think compounded to that, right? If you're watching all these images and it's basically women in G-strings sliding up and down the pole, and it's my understanding that Africans do have a very conservative, they are conservative, right? Like there are just certain things you just don't do. Women behave a certain way, and there are a lot of things that are expectations of women. And if you're seeing imagery that is counter to those conservative viewpoints, of course you're going to think they're all whores. And if that's all you ever see, I mean, I'll take me for example. I didn't think there was any wealth in Africa until maybe about 15 years ago, right? Because all the images you see of Africa are the starving kids with the swollen bellies, and you can see their ribs, and somebody is on TV asking for money, right? Or if you do see an African in the movie, they're trying to trick somebody out of money. I mean, I think if we're going to be honest, like I don't know how many Nigerian scam stories I've heard of in the last 15 years about how Nigerians are constantly scamming people out of money. So if those are the things you're constantly hearing or experiencing through other people or through the media, that's all you're going to think. So I don't think if that's all you're giving, that's all you're going to think. And I don't think that's unfair. Now, I will say if you are exposed to things being different, I am exposed to African people who have money or who aren't swollen bellies with sunken ribs and begging for money or doing scams. You do have to look at the beliefs you've held all this time based on what you knew. And I would employ you to start changing that viewpoint. You have that data point initially that led you to that ignorant perspective, and now you have new data. It's incumbent on you to start changing your viewpoint based on the new data.
Thank you so much, Sean. You're right. If people look at the African American community through the musical videos, if you watch some Snoop Dogg or a lot of this musical videos is they're just out there. The way they use Black women and in these videos, sometimes it's, to be honest, personally, it's an eyesore. Now, Sean said white people use it, but don't you think that Black people who put this content out there also have a responsibility, especially Black men, have a responsibility of toning down the extent to which they overly sexualize Black women? You're right. What's your perception? What's your take on that?
That is a really hard question, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Were you asking him or were you asking?
Yeah, I was asking you, right, but you can chime in after him. Go ahead, okay. You're right.
Yeah. So the saying, there's a saying that says, art imitates life. And at some point in time, that might have been true. But in our generation, what we can actually see is more of the opposite, life imitating art. And so what we have to understand is that that's why I was saying earlier, where there's understanding, there is no anger. And when you understand all of the complexities and the resources that is being poured into consciously making that image and making superstars of the image, to allow the degradation of a people for a specific gain for another people, because if we can keep these people at bay, then we stand the world to gain. Then you will have a better understanding of this holistically. That's the issue. The issue that the minute that I see somebody judging this from a bottom level, it lets me know their level of comprehension, their level of consciousness, which then either is maybe I have to now recognize, are there somebody that I could educate on that? Maybe they could understand better, or they just stuck in their ways. So yes, the artists themselves have a responsibility. Absolutely have a responsibility. Okay. So the minute that you start to critique an artist, the first thing they're going to do in America and pretty much all over the world now is, it's just entertainment. But see, the African concept is holistic in understanding that nothing is separate from the reality in which we exist in. Everything matters, from the thought that you have to the word that you speak to how the affairs that you have in your bedroom with your wife. It affects us in some way, shape, or form, because it's not separate. It is holistic. It is connected. So again, we don't understand this system. So a lot of times, too many people have opinions about things that they don't understand the mechanisms behind this power. And it's a power that's being constituted to make this reality, and it's working very well because we have become ignorant. That's why I said that my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Knowledge is the accumulation of truth. But we got to go beyond knowledge and get to wisdom, which is the application of truth. And then beyond wisdom, we got to go to get understanding, which is the assimilation of truth. And so these levels, putting it into a holistic form and understanding that it ain't they or us, it's we. I'm from African. I'm African. I would just happen to be taken away from Africa. So a lot of the things that we experience is from an African perspective. We are inherently African. Anything that shows outside of traditional African culture is us being separated and derived consciously by an opposing force to separate us from our source of strength. That's what we are noticing. And they will pay Lil Wayne, Lil Baby, and all the other people millions and billions of dollars in order to influence the next generation to keep you away from your African culture, because that's where your strength lies.
That's I don't know who wants to respond to that. I don't know, Natalia. Okay.
I just want to. Sorry.
I think everybody has something to say to that.
I just want to.
Go ahead, Natalia. She hasn't spoken in a while.
I just want to add to that. Sad to say, we are not the one in charge of the media.
Okay.
So they filter what they want to put out in the media. We're seeing what they want to put out. It's just like, I can admit, Jamaica is an over-sexualized country. You see the same thing in the media with the girls and, all that stuff. And they're pushing the narrative of, women now wanting to do plastic surgery on their body because they think they have to look this type of way, but it's what's being put in the media. But another thing that I also wanted to add, being that Africa is what we see as our home, Africa is one of the most divided country there is. Y'all are divided amongst continent. If we were to look at everything that's happening, you guys are the one that should be teaching us. You guys are the one that we should be having a reflection on us. And Eva Bob said it, Africa needs to unite. And I don't think we are going to unite as the offspring of Africa until Africa does that. and shows us that that can be done. So it's left up to you guys to make it right.
No, I think we can end the show on this. Fantastic. I agree. Holistically, I agree, and that's why we have decided to turn this course, to stay on this path in the diaspora, and do it at a level that perhaps has not yet been done in the diaspora. We're very serious about this. This is the most important conversation. Africa must unite, and Africa must bring the culture to our brothers and sisters who were taken away from us. We must do more of the reaching out. We must restore our brothers and sisters. But I know Aloysius just wanted to add something to this, and then Sean, you can go ahead. Go ahead, brother Aloysius.
You're 100% right when you say about restructuring cultures. I think when we discussed about what you said about Africa, and I think that's what's going on now, but it's not being like broadcast throughout the whole place. And that's, the coup d'etats that's happening in Burkina Faso and Chad and even Mali, these are part of the whole restructuring process that a lot of people, especially in America, don't understand that's going on right now. There are people out there that's saying, like Ghana 4 years ago made this whole trip about going for people to come back. If you knew the history about Africa, it's a continent that has been divided not by one country, it's by a whole continent. Europe came in there after World War II, after World War I, and cut up like a pie. So it's very difficult to say. And before then, there was no borders. It's very difficult to deal with right now. But we always learned from America. America has been always the teachers of these liberties. Even look at the French Revolution. And I don't want to talk about Europeans, but it's the truth. They learned from the Americans. The Civil Rights Movement was a huge teaching point throughout Africa because it was right before the independence of many African countries.
Yes.
And that shaped, if you would have known, that shaped the ideas and format. Kwame was one of the most influential people that's been, if you knew about Africa, and he wanted to make African united. And unfortunately, he was assassinated like most of the great African Americans and Pan-African leaders in the world has been. Yes, you are right. But we also, I think we shouldn't think separately. We should think holistically, like Brother said, how we can connect to each other. The powers of African Americans is more advanced than everybody can think. The idea of pulling out resources out of America and putting in another continent, another country, causes more power strength to African Americans than they do think they have. I tell people I can pay $200 in Africa a month to somebody's wage as a cook, servant, cook, driver, even security, and they will live a luxury life. And I have men I walking around and spending $1,000 a month on some shoes. These are kind of things that instead of thinking separately, Africa should do this, Americans should do that, we should think about cross-country relationships. Then that will strengthen and move things a lot faster. What I'm trying to say is there's something called a counterculture. Counterculture doesn't happen at a mass level. It happens at a very micro level. Counterculture is what made the hip hop what it is today, which became an ultimate strength of unity. It was at one time, the hip hop culture was called a counterculture, made by 8-9 people underneath a bridge. Now it's spread out to the whole world. We need to understand that is kind of thing. We are thinking massive or what the media is saying. But when we talk about the micro level, what we can do microly. Sister, I am so sorry if any African men have called you the whores or tramps or all these.
Oh wait, they didn't call me anything.
I'm saying, I'm just talking about. No, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to all my sisters out there. That's the first level, is to say, to apologize for each other's trauma and inflicting trauma to each other. We always talk about, when I talk to African Americans, I talk to Africans want to tell me about their traumas all the time. African Americans want to tell me about our traumas, and we are stuck in the trauma cycle. But instead of saying, what can we do micrally to help each other up? And that's just simple communication. We're traumatic people. Yes, both of us. What's next? And the next step should be kind of just thinking about social development. Really, social development, social emotional learning is a very important thing for all Pan-African people. Go ahead, brothers. Excuse me for ranting.
Aloysius, I just wanted you to, if you remember the story that you wanted to share earlier, I didn't want you to forget. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and share that.
Oh, okay. So the story started off, and I'm not going to put out names because this happened when we were kids. I was in school having problems making friends, and I got so excited. One of the kids, Caucasian kid, invited me over just to play video games. When I was a tall kid, very tall kid. I excited after school. He goes to school. I go home, tell my mom. My mom said, okay, it's down the street, ride my bike over there. I knock on the door. The mom's answer. And the mom said, who are you? I said, I'm down the street. I was invited to come over. My mom said, it's okay. She closed the door and she told me, wait. And she came back and she said her son couldn't come out. And when I said, okay, when she closed the door, I can hear her whispering to her son, he needs to go play with his own type of people. Don't forget, at that time, I was trying to find my footing. I went home. I was devastated because, one, I was devastated because the other black kids called me African booty scratching. And now the white kids telling me I need to go play my own. Who are my own people? And my mother said something very profound. She said to me, son, she's right. You need to go and play with your own people. And she said, your own people will always accept you for who you are, not what they think you are. No matter what. So that's why when you see a black man, African man, or Nigerian man, particularly, I'm guessing, they can assimilate in so many different places because their parents are saying that you should be able to go this and that. But my mother was right. Your people would be people that accept you for who you are, not what they think you are, or what you think, or any traumas or biases they have for you. And that one sticks to me to this day. Finding my own people. My own people is people that have the same spirit as me. Yes. And that's all I want to talk about when it comes to unity. It's through spiritual connection. And that is, and I do believe in council culture. I do believe I do believe in I do believe in destroying cultures and rebuilding our own cultures as we like it, and not other people hate culture.
Great. We'll go to the solutions, but there's a lot underneath. And the reason why sometimes it's very important to go underneath is because we all know about root analysis. We know that the black community is struggling from a lot of things. PSTD, colonialism, slavery, we are struggling. And so if we don't go to the roots to find out some of these things, literally talk about them openly, and then make sure that we can get past it, we might be talking about the solutions and not dealing with the root cause, the problem, the foundation, what is causing these issues in our subconscious. And that's why it's very much needed that we are vivid, we are as plain as possible, and truthful to the division, the stereotypes, and the rhetorics that exist in our communities. And I really appreciate you all for sharing. It's 11 minutes past 7 p.m. Central. You're watching the Progressive Mind Show live. We're here in the city of Chicago. And if you're on Facebook watching, please make sure that you are liking and sharing. This is a very, very important. I think this is the most important conversation within the diaspora community for all of us. In all the education, in all the gettings, we must get the knowledge of ourselves, the knowledge of our history, and the knowledge of our connectivity as Black people. And so please make sure that you are sharing, you are liking and sharing so we can all educate ourselves. Folks on YouTube, please share. There are a ton of comments. So before I would like to read the comments. I'd like to go to the comments. When we come back, we will talk about solutions. Time may not permit us. We can continue tomorrow or come back again. But Sean, I know you wanted to respond to some of the submissions earlier. Please go ahead if you want to. If not, we can go to the comments.
I forgot what I was gonna say, but the only point I do remember is
Yes.
that somebody said that we should design our stuff Afro American. No, don't do that because you get things like the Holocaust and apartheid. Do not model anything after American structures.
And I agree with you, Sean, on that. I totally agree with you.
Is that an advice to Africans here?
That's advice to the world. And
Okay.
here's the thing: if you know anything about history, apartheid was built or modeled after American slavery and just turned on its head. Same thing with the Holocaust. Recently, notes came out that they had studied American slavery and how it was structured and how they oppressed Black people, and they used those blueprints to design the Holocaust. I share that to say, I don't think America should be the blueprint of anything going further. We should probably look at somebody else as the leaders on how to bring us together, because it most certainly is not in America.
Thank you for sharing this. Actually, it's very, very important. And the reason why I mentioned, insinuated if you were communicating this to Africans is that if you go to Ghana and some parts of Africa right now, it's getting out of hand. The direct import of the Western culture in America, some of the negative culture of America, is eating our youth up. And I feel like we have to pay attention to this. So for the youth of Africa, if you're watching this now or probably later, here's an African American, here's an American telling you that our culture, the culture you have in Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, wherever, any part of Africa, is valuable, is beautiful, it has essence. Let's maintain our culture. There's a need for balance. Yes, we can do stuff from the West, copy, but we're copying too widely, and it's not going to help us. If you're not taking it from your own African brother, here's an American telling you that is not going to help us. And I'm sure.
And let me just be clear. I'm not saying all things in America are bad. There are lots of great things about America.
Of course.
I do think there's a lot of value in maintaining your own culture. Yeah.
And also it goes back to what I said earlier. Yeah. We don't control the media. We need to put ourselves in spaces where we as Black people have more control of stuff. Starting to make us a trademark. It's just like people want to put this friction between reggae music and what's it called? I forgot. Because I'm talking
hip hop.
No, African music.
Afrobeat.
Afrobeats. Yeah. They're trying to create this fiction between reggae and Afrobeats. Why would you want to do that? It's just another type of Black people, breaking off from us. We're just breaking off from each other. You have reggaeton, who the Puerto Ricans and the Mexican, which is also a break off of reggae, but you don't see that narrative being pushed on reggaeton like they're trying to push on Afrobeats, which is sad. They're putting us against each other.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. No, and again, I just wanted to clarify that I think hopefully I mentioned that the negative cultures that we're copying back in Africa is what we need to limit on. And so if I didn't use the word negative, my apologies, but that's what I was trying to say. So to your point, Sean, there's a need for balance, but we can wholeheartedly copy everything that we see on TV from American or the Western culture. It's not going to help us. We need to maintain ours.
Yeah.
Right. It's so let's go to the comments now. We've had a ton of them come in, and we'll start from the bottom. We'll go all the way up. This is from Devon Gordine. They're already saying Latinos created hip hop.
Who is saying that?
I don't know.
Who said that?
I don't know.
If they want to know the history of hip hop, they need to read up on.
Lord,
because
they need to read up on Kool Herc. Kool Herc is a Jamaican. He was the one that actually started the whole hip hop. You guys can research it, learn more about it. They talk about it in Black history. They talk about it every time. Cool Herc. He's from Jamaica. So they need to do more reading and research, learn about this stuff.
Yes.
I didn't
Thank
know
you.
he was from I didn't know he was Jamaican. That's
Yes,
news
he
to me.
is.
Yeah.
You're right. Did you know he's from Jamaica too?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different narratives. They say that hip hop started, some would say, in the Bronx, and some would say from a Jamaican artist, and then some would say I have heard the Latino story as well. So there's a lot of different narratives as it relates to where they say hip hop is from.
But I think that during last year's 50th hip hop anniversary celebration, I think that they had attributed the founder to the name that Natalia just put out, and I think I listened to it, and so I think that is very authentic. I think we need to establish that this Jamaican brother came and he started hip hop in New York, right, Natalia?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And so we'll go to the next comment. Black culture is important too. See that's we are the dominant culture. Okay. And Dionada love, indeed, Sana, in all of our getting, we must get an understanding. Thank you. Devon again, Will Crosby, lineage base, and okay. I do not understand this one. I hope you can resend your information. Tugby Car is watching. He says, "Great job, thank you, Tugby, for joining us this evening." See if I can get one here. K Mesa says, "Let's start off by making it a once in a lifetime to visit the motherland. The mindset starts from there, and that's how the conversation changes amongst each other." Booyah!
I agree, and that's why I really love this Ghana, what is it, the year of the return that they do every year. I think it is such a brilliant thing to do to open this gates and encourage African Americans, and I assume Caribbeans are also encouraged to come and come back home and spend some time in Africa.
You have a lot of Jamaicans migrating to Ghana also. We've been seeing a lot of that. So yeah.
Yes. And that's why, Sean, you're going to get on a trip with us this year.
Let's go. Let's go. Just let me know when I need to take my vacation and we can go to Ghana.
All right. I'll put it out.
Can I say something to this?
Yes.
Can I say one
Are you
more
gonna tell me
thing
to go
this?
to Nigeria?
I mean, why not? I mean, what I would say is, for real, if you knew about us, the Africans, Bantu, all throughout Africa. I don't think just Nigeria. I think all throughout Africa is great. Ghana is great. Kenya, South Africa. But what I'm trying to say is that in every culture, microculture, there's always a going back kind of thing. And I think February is a great month for the whole world to celebrate, not just in America, but also all throughout the whole world to celebrate and be able to maybe get in touch with cultures from the past. You know, the old saying, you'll never know where you're going if you don't know where you came from. Well, we all come, if you knew about Nigerians, we are from Bantu people and the Edo, and we all connected somehow. And you could find us in every country in the West African region. I go to Senegal, I go to Ghana, I go to Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Benin, all throughout Africa. And I don't think just one country, just because everybody's so different. The culture is so different everywhere.
Yes. So I like how Nigerians always want to compete with Ghanaians. I like that. I love that. Just because Sean is trying to come with me, let's just say, heck no, I'm not going
to. I think y'all doing it right. We're not compete. You're doing it right. So why not? It's not competition. Like you said, it's no
we love that. We love
just
that.
Say, come visit us too.
Yes. Thank you
we
so
much. We
much.
want to see where the first ship was sailed with the slaves, so we're gonna go to Ghana.
There you go. So
I'll go to both. I'll spend 1 week in one and the other week in another. Boom, then I'm good.
See, why not? And you're right. I think you already been to a lot of African countries, and I'll have you share your experience to those who are listening who have never been with us in a little bit. And then we'll go to a few more comments that I want to get out here. This one is from Asunaba. Africans can never unite as long as they see anything white superior to them and allow them to be manipulated, them and allow them to manipulate their leaders because of natural resources. Africans need to do away from the mental slavery first, and then they can achieve anything positive. Thank you so much, Asunaba, for putting this out there. Chioma says, how can we move past the um, tragedies we have all faced as Black people? Can we unite on the fact that Africa was taken advantage of and still is today? We hate one another because of them. We are fighting a battle we can never win. They divided us and we continue to dig the scars and further divide. We are all hurts. Let's unite. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll take one more or maybe two more comments and then we get back to our panel this evening. This is from Jamal Matuka. 54 countries in Africa, many different cultures, easily the most diverse place on the planet. They have to unify for there to be any indemnification. Wow, wow. This is from Baby's Ark. African artists are creating more and more music and video like American artists. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, to be honest. We must do better, guys. I need you to comment on some of this, respond to some of these comments. I know I'm going through them real quickly, but if there's anything that catches your attention, I need you to let me know so we can respond to them, because these are very key points. As a Nigerian American, we know the best of both worlds. And I think Priscilla says, speak the truth. Auntie Noble says, and you know it, my brother. Thank you, Auntie Noble, for being part of the show. Let me see if I can read one more. I like that viewpoint. We live in a world where everyone has an opinion about things we do not know. However, the question about sexuality is different to digest. But yes, you're right, very deep. Okay, so there are a few more comments, but because of time, I would like to go back to our, let's take this one from Keisha. Nah, it's no bad blood. So many Jamaicans are now moving to Africa. Okay, that is, I'm sure that is Natasha's friend, because she was giggling when
She's actually the owner of Coffee Radio, so just want to shout her out. So tune into Coffee Radio.
Okay, Coffee Radio. Coffee Radio, you got to feature Progressive Mind show on Coffee Radio station. You know, we're Jamaicans too, right? You know, culture.
Jamaican in spirit.
Yeah. Rosie, darling, transparency is important. This will help clear our collective ignorance, the strength of African American people in what paved way for some of us in the United States. I think that point is very, very clear. Thank you so much for the comments. Tons of them. We truly appreciate it. And Rebecca is on the show. Thank you. Now, any of the comments that anyone wants to respond to quickly?
Just want to say I'm happy that a lot of these comments, they're talking about Africa should unite. That is something that I love, because it means there's hope. At least we are kind of seeing eye to eye. And I think we can get there. Someone said we're going in a path of non-destruction, but just the fact of knowing that we are all are saying unity, I think we can do it. I definitely think we can do it.
Fantastic. I believe that too. Any more comments from the audience? Okay. So let me just get this one out there. Divide and conquer by the colonialist has made our bane. Okay. So now that we are learning that a lot of our problems were caused by outside factors and not necessarily Africans or Black people just trying to be mean to each other, we're going to look at the way forward. But before then, again, I don't want to miss anybody's comment. Any question earlier that somebody wanted to respond to or comment before I move on to the way forward? All right. So we want to look at how spirituality has been missing, if it has, from the African culture here in the diaspora. Aloysius, I know you're very passionate about this. Whether spirituality has been missing or not, how significant is spirituality to the growth and forwardness of the African diaspora or Black people in general?
Before I start with this conversation, I would like to talk about this quote. It's our memories of things long past are our light to illuminate the future. I think that's really, really important for me when I think about where I want to be at even tomorrow. I kind of think that sometimes we forget to reach back and learn from the things in the past. And I have it behind me. And I think that's also in spirituality as well. We want to seek knowledge, but knowledge we see is only in a technical form. But knowledge also could be spiritual in its own right. Stories. For me, myself, I always go back to my elders and talk to even my mother, my father, people, my uncles, and they give me guidance and they tell me stories about my ancestors. Those kind of spirituality helps me decide what I want to do. I don't take away from religion a lot. I think they could go hand in hand, but I think sometimes we forget that we are spiritual creatures. We had our own history with spiritual connection, and sometimes we forget that. Sometimes in Africa, we need to keep that for ourselves and also continue to grow from it, spread it, but also understand the greatness of those religious good religion aspects as well too. They can work hand in hand together. So that's my opinion on that.
Thank you. Uriah, you are a spiritual advisor. First of all, what kind of spirituality or spiritualism do you ascribe to, and how do you advise people? If you may just give us the background and tell us the essence of spirituality in all of this conversation when it comes to navigating the relationships between Africans, Caribbeans, and African Americans. Of course, to a larger extent, Afro-Latino and South Americans too.
So the first thing we have to understand is that says, it is the spirit that gives life and the flesh profit is nothing. So I'm going to give a shorter analogy or just a short observation of what I'm even seeing. I got two sons, 10 and 6 years old. They play soccer. Neither one of them has a soccer background as relates to from my side of the family, which I was an athlete, played basketball, football, and most African American sports. So I didn't, the first year I expected them to kind of, just kind of exist out there, get a feel. And then once they got a feel, and they're like, well, I want to get better. Then we're going to get some training and they're going to get better. But to my surprise, a little bit to my surprise, I have to say, they actually dominated. Both of them dominated the sport. But it was very noticeable because although there were a lot of, not just what the area they live in is a suburban area, it's a very diverse town. Diverse city. So you're talking about lots of Asians, Africans, lots of Caribbeans, Haitians, Jamaicans, a lot of different people in this particular area. And so there's a lot of kids, that are out there. But it's almost like, I have to say to you, it's almost like all the Black kids, and whether they're Caribbean, if they're African, if they're African American, it's almost like they're just running around out there. They have the speed, they have, the physical strength, but the spirit, our spirit is gone. So you're talking about other kids, Korean kids and Hispanic kids, they out there dominating. But then here were my sons. So it made me think about, I'm like, what is it? Because my sons, this is their first year where it's kids on their team who've been playing for 6 and 7 years already. So it had to make me think, what was different about my sons than every other African, based person that's out there. I'm like, what's the difference? And I said, it's the spirit. But when we say spirit, I don't think we often understand what that actually means. Spirit just simply means something that cannot be measured within a laboratory. Okay? It is metaphysical. It is beyond the physical. So it could mean a whole bunch of different things, but it is culture that gives life to spirit. And if you're void of a functional, righteous culture, then you will see dysfunction and lack of ability in the things that you do. Your skill set, your dominance factor, your aggressiveness will all be diminished if you are lacking in a rich culture. So one of the things, you know, my 6-year-old, he's 6 now, but when he was 3 years old, every day I'm asking him, I say, Ari, what's your name mean? He gonna tell you at 3 years old, my name means the Lion of God. And he gonna say it with such passion. He understands who he is from the name. Most of us, we've already missed it with just our names. In African culture, your name, a name is not just a name is a function. So without having a name that connects you with something higher than yourself, we are already missing the mark. So, you know, names. And so beyond that, what I'm explaining is you ask as it relates to how does this work? The first thing that has to happen, I'm a holistic health practitioner as well, but the first thing that I do in my holistic health practice and or my spiritual advisement counseling is a sense of identity, because everybody operates within the be, do, and have. Be fruitful, do multiply and replenish, do subdue the earth, and then you have dominion. So you have to be first. Being is your identity. That's the first step that everybody's missing. You don't really know who you are. Your history started with slavery in your mind because that's what you was taught. So you don't have much access to power because you don't connect with Mansa Musa, although you were in West Africa during that time. So being, identity, then the being gives life to your ability to do, which is your activity. And your activity gives life to your possessions or what you can have. So spiritual advisement is all based upon understanding who you actually are. It says in the scriptures that you are the salt of the earth. But if you have lost your favor, then what good are you? And then it said what? We have become wise to do evil, but when it comes to good, we know not. Wise doesn't mean what we think it means in the English language. In the Hebrew, the word wise is actually the word maskil. Maskil means skill. You are skillful. You have been taught the skills to twerk, but you don't know West African dance. You have been taught the skills to rap about your block and about how good it feels to kill a nigga. But you don't know how you haven't taught the skills on how to build your brother and your sister up. This all starts with culture. So our culture has to be restored back to a righteous, functional one, which gives life to our identity, which then gives us the ability to do, which then will allow us to be able to have. And so you asked what my spiritual system was. I am Hebrew. I'm an African Hebrew Israelite, a particular set of people who left America in the late 1960s, and we reestablished ourselves in northern Eastern Africa, which is Israel. It is not the Middle East, contrary to popular belief. It sits on the what you would call in Hebrew the Halua Ha-Afrikani, which means that it sits on the African tectonic plate. It shares the same flora and fauna, plant life and wildlife as Africa. So Israel is Africa, but they could not tell you that, because then you would start to be able to say, well, hold on. Could those people that's talked about in that great book, could it be African people? So they had to disconnect the land from your mind with the people of the original inhabitants, which is why it cannot be peace within that region, because neither one of them is actually being factual of who the original inhabitants were. That is the synopsis of where the spiritual aspect of what you asked me.
Very, very, very deep, very powerful. Anybody wants to respond to that, please? Okay.
Here's what I will not to totally counter everything he said, right?
Okay.
And I'd like to actually build on some of it. I know there's a lot of conversation about where our history started and there is always a concern about looking at slavery to be the kind of the ground zero of where we started as African Americans, right? I do think we need to stop trying to make slavery such a uncomfortable point in history, right? I understand there's a lot of rich history in Africa that we are a part of, and that is a part of our history. But I also think us being brought over in boats and being one of the few survivors that landed on this continent, as well as the Caribbean, as well as Jamaica, as well as Brazil and all those other places, I think there is pride in that. And I think we really need to stop pushing back against that pride. Those people survived those boats. They survived almost 400 years of slavery, then another 100 years of Jim Crow. And I really think we need to stop diminishing, excuse me, the contribution and the pride that can be sought in us surviving and persevering through those tragedies, right? As far as a spiritual perspective, I don't know spiritually how that can unite us, right? What I do know is one of the things that has always kept us together as a people is community. And the moment that our communities were pulled apart from desegregation, from pulling us out of Africa, that is where we started losing our community and thus ourselves. So I think if we just start looking at ourselves as a community, seeking out each other in a community, not only here in the US, but in Africa, we will see a huge shift in the being very idealistic parts of being an American, right? That is a real big part of being an American. You are always looking out for self. You are taught to not really care about other people except the people you're related to. I think if we push against that and start leaning on the people that look like us, not only here, but over in the continent, we will see a seismic shift in how we relate to each other and how we can progress as a people.
Okay. That's thank you so much for sharing. I think I have one more, maybe two more follow-up questions for you, Sean. But you're right. Would you want to respond to what Sean just said with regards to the Africans that came here and went to Caribbean and all that? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So yes, Sean, absolutely. I think we are absolutely in agreement that absolutely what we were able to survive, it shows testament to our great strength and our great ability to overcome. So I hope that's not what was conveyed from what I was sharing. What I'm referring to is that the disadvantage is that many of our people in America doesn't know anything beyond that starting point. So then if you don't know anything beyond, well, we started as a slave and then we broke free and we went through all this, the racial tensions, and now we drive a BMW and live in a nice house. Then the misconception that brings to a people is that anything beyond slavery is progress, because that's where our starting point is from our minds. And in reality, with the BMW, with your nice house and your nice job that you can go and, and check into, to a particular, career, is still subpar to what our lifestyles really were prior to slavery in itself. And that limiting belief is keeping us where we are, which is give birth to the negative entertainment, because we free now. And in reality, we're far from free. We don't understand that in Timbuktu and the Mali Empire, that the average professor in the universities was 14 years of age, not because they just needed 14-year-olds, but because that's how much our minds develop and how fast our minds develop. And although Mali at that time was so rich in gold that when Mansa Musa traveled to to the middle to Saudi Arabia. He flooded the economy. But guess what? That was not even the number one export in the Mali Empire. The number one export was books and information. So much so when the Europeans finally, when we got weak enough that they could finally come in, because they couldn't come in at that before then because our security levels was too massive and too great. But when they finally were able to come in, that when they burnt the books in Mali and in Timbuktu, that it turned the rivers black. Why is that important? Because then we'll understand that we don't even got to go back that far, but just 4th century Africa, just 4th century, that's not too long ago, that you didn't even have to, when the Europeans would come and give the reports of what Africa was, they like, whoa, in Britain, it's prostitution, it is murders, it's gang activity. When I went to West Africa and I'm looking at the people don't lock their doors, the kings are generous, the people are being taken care of, there was no homelessness, there's no prostitution. So when we understand that we have built worlds like that, then this little, I can go to a job and drive a nice car in America because I came from slavery, it becomes so obsolete that your mind understands that we are far from where we need to go, but it also gives you the ability, identity to know what you are capable of. That's the issue, that we are over glorifying the slavery period. But that was just a disruption of African history. It wasn't the start of our history. That's what the importance as relates, what I'm referring to as relates to that.
Wow.
I get what you're saying. I disagree, which is okay. Nothing wrong with disagreeing, right? I even in our history and our understanding of slavery is greatly incomplete. We don't fully know what happened. It didn't even occur to me until like 5 years ago that men were raped during slavery. So our knowledge of our history, even from slavery, is so limited and so incomplete. Even knowing what our history was in Africa would still make us incomplete on our history in totality. So there's just a lot of overall learning that needs to happen for all of us, even if we did go back to Shaka Zulu and Timbuktu. But even just here, we just fundamentally do not understand our history. But I do agree with you. That's part of the breakdown with us, is we just have no real collective understanding of any of our history outside of Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks wouldn't get out of her seat on the bus.
What do you fundamentally disagree? Hold on. What do you when you say you disagree? I want to know what specifically you disagree with when it comes to Uriah. Uriah, I'll give you the chance to respond.
So I think it's in all of those cultures, right? I think the history of Jamaica started when those Africans landed there. That's when their history started. But there is an incompleteness that they may not even understand. I don't know. I'm not Jamaican. I can't speak to that.
Okay.
But I think that is where our history started. That does not discount everything before that. It doesn't. It does not discount anything before that. But if you talk about the history of America, you don't talk about what happened in 1216. That's not what you discuss. You talk about the history of America and what happened when they landed here.
What was before the landing of Black Americans in this country?
As far as what?
As far as Black history, Black people here, or
there would be no such thing, because before that we were African. So there would be no history of Black people, because before that we were African.
There was history of Black people. Remember that Black people were originally nomads. They were nomads. They were always traveling. Black people was always here.
But I think you're missing what I'm saying. Before that, we were African. There was no such thing as Black people before we landed here.
Right.
We were African.
Originally, we are nomads. We've always been traveling for years.
Oh, for sure.
We were the one that went to the Europeans and showed them gold. We were the ones that did that because we're always traveling. So that's also a part of history that's not talked about. And it should be talked about. It's not only slavery.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes. So no, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's say something. We're talking about spiritual and spiritual connection. And I'm just gonna, no matter how we have differences and opinions, but this is the true light. I mean, it's been every single one of the people that I've talked to Every person of African descent that have gone to Africa told me the same thing. Something happened. Their body feel better. Their knees feel better. Their hair started growing. Nails started going. Things started happening to them physically. Were just landed in that continent, putting their feet on the ground. That is, like you can say, like you can say, it's without explanation. So that's a spiritual understanding. So I'm just saying, no matter what you might have about your personal belief about the history of the individual in certain countries, the spiritual connection is still there when you go to these countries. When it don't matter where you're from, every time you landed as a militant person into Africa, something manifests changes in you. You lose your weight. That you had knee pains, it's gone. Something changes in you. The diet. You can talk about it right now. There's a new medicine called evolution medicine, which they're using up north and to kind of cure MS, and they're realizing it comes from evolution from before there was a European, and that's how they're solving how to cure diseases of today. So I know what you're saying about the history and identity of individual, but if we're talking about spiritual connection, it goes without saying for the thousands and millions and billions of people that have gone back to Africa over the decades, they will have the same story. Something changed in them and they don't know why, and that's spiritual. That's all I have to say.
That's fair. That's fair. I think I said a while ago that community is going to ultimately be important, right?
Yeah.
Us coming together as a community. I think we're saying the same thing and using different words.
No.
But ultimately, I agree. There is a relatedness and a connectedness that we all have to get back to as people from Africa.
Fantastic.
I just
Go
want
ahead.
to add one thing.
Yeah.
If you notice, one of the things that connect us as Black people, anywhere we go, anywhere we are, the minute we hear the beat of the drums, something inside of you, some spiritual movement, no matter where you're from in this world, the minute you hear those African drums, there is a spiritual connection that we all feel that we cannot explain. And even that type of drums is missing from us and the young people, even today.
Man, you guys have dropped some knowledge this evening. And look, I think we should come back next week, Tuesday, then continue. This is a lot. Next week, Tuesday, I know Aloysius might not be able to make it. Who's available? Brother, you're right. Are you available next week, Tuesday?
If we do it, I got a group coaching call at 7:30 Eastern time.
Okay.
But
so we'll figure that out. Sean.
Monday could work.
Monday could work. Okay, so we might have to do another Monday. Okay. Well, we might have to come back next week, Monday, and continue this because there were a few things that I wanted us to even to look at. Again, when it comes to the rhetorics, the stereotypes, reason why it is very important for me is that we still have a ton of folks who are just ignorant on both sides. We are seriously ignorant about, again, ourselves, our history, and our brothers and sisters, right? They're just people who look like us. We don't seem to assimilate. We kind of have this inner softness towards other races than our own. And there are a lot of these little nuggets of information that we've gathered over the decades, the way we were trained in school. And so we have all of those firmly merged in our subconscious. And we have to be able to go through some of these things. And then we can look at the way forward, some of which you have all mentioned this evening. It's almost 8 p.m. So we'd like to wrap up this today. And then I'll talk to you guys after the show, see if Monday works, and then we can come back here. It's Black History Month. Heck, so we have to dive into it. First off, we have not even discovered or learned about the contribution of African Americans to this country enter the world. We have not talked about the inventions, even the essence of Black History Month and all of that. So hopefully we can dive into that next week. But for today, I'll take a few questions, a few comments. I'll take your last remarks for today, and then we will come back. This one is from Kwesi Kwejo Ado. There are already Black people here. But history has been kept under because teaching it will not benefit the powers that be. The fake history has been taught for us so long that you cannot even get our Black panel members to agree on our own history. That is a very, very critical point because yes, sometimes we have a debate, but even who has total knowledge of their own history? I don't think any race, whether it's a Chinese or white people or Indians, I don't think any particular race have complete hold of their history. And so we are bound to share bounds of ideas of each other. But underlying factor is that we need to learn more about our own history and about ourselves. So thank you so much for sharing, brother Kwesi. And then we have a fish feels good in water. An African feels that connection called spiritual. Great. This guy says, improve where you were and fight the colonizers. Okay. Asunaba says, I totally disagree with him. What is he saying is the downfall of our modern African generation. We cannot live on the past glory of our ancestors. Masa Musa is past and gone. We should educate ourselves about how we can free ourselves from the mental slavery and accusing and pointing fingers. Well, thank you so much, Asunaba. And I think that we are not necessarily pointing fingers. We are doing what you were saying we should do. Learn about our culture, learn about ourselves. That's exactly what we're doing. And so it's a debate, it's a healthy debate, it's a healthy dialogue, and that's usually how dialogues go. Different perspectives, different information. Sometimes it's the same. Articulating it may come off different, but we're all trying to head towards the right direction. So thank you for your comment. Chioma says African and Black are synonymous. Yes. Another comment said, from Chioma again, she says, how do we learn our history? What steps to take? Because not just African Americans, but Africans in Africa and diaspora may not know, personally speaking. Yes, Chioma, I agree with you. And then my brother says, let's repeat this show. Yes, okay, the Big Daddy, we will repeat this show for sure. And then this guy says, Devon says, the Africans will love Dr. Umar. Well, I guess we are all Africans. For the purposes of the learning and all that we're trying to do, we are all Africans, we are all Blacks. So yes, we Dr. Umar will be a good resource for all of us. This young man is seriously gifted. God bless you. This is from Kwesi. And I think he made this comment. I saw it coming through when Uri was speaking. And so I think we can end here, end with this comment. Have a good night. I think she's done. She says, okay, I've had enough. Okay, so I think we will go to our comments and take your closing remarks for today. We will come back again, whether Monday or Tuesday. Would stay tuned, listeners. Stay tuned. We'll let you know. Make sure you keep these conversations going and keep sharing as we take our last comments. We'll go from the top and come all the way down. So, Sean, please.
Oh, I'm kicking it off.
Yes. You started it. You want us to end it?
Fair. Here's what I will say. I don't think disagreement means anything other than that is a disagreement, right? We cannot expect people from different parts of the country, let alone different parts of the world, to come to this conversation being totally aligned with what our history is or what our path forward is. All right, this conversation is way too premature for us to have that level of agreement, right? But I think what is important here is that we all come kind of seeking the same goal, which is somehow to bring us together. And I think if everybody comes with that perspective, the disagreements are fine. You will find harmony in disagreement. You should not expect everybody to say the same thing and be totally on the same page. That's not real life. That's not how anything works. But everybody came with respect. Everybody came with amazing viewpoints, and I appreciate everybody's perspective. And I learned a little something while being here. So definitely looking forward to continue this conversation if I'm asked back.
No, you already asked back, so that's a given.
But I appreciate this conversation. It's given me a lot to chew on coming off of this podcast.
Thank you so much, Uriah.
Yes.
Yes. Well, first of all, I would just like to thank you, Sina, for the invitation, and I would like to thank all of the other panelists for giving their time. I learned so much, and I would like to thank the audience for taking their time. They could be anywhere, but they chose to show up. That speaks volumes to where they are. I would like to just share that Honorable Marcus Garvey said it best. He said, "A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." And so when you really can understand, overstand, and understand what he was referring to, then it gives you the ability to tap into a power that many of us have never been able to experience. And I'm speaking because I'm not a testimony, or whatever you may perceive me to be. I'm not a testimony of myself. I come from a people that out of the west side of Chicago who through history formulated themselves and were able to be the largest repatriation of African Americans to ever leave outside of America and to start a community, common unity. You can't have a community unless you have a common unity. And who now were able to move around this world with power and influence and gain respect that we have not seen for thousands of years. And so I'm not speaking from an anecdotal point of view. I'm speaking from a point of this is what I live every day. And I can go into rooms at the highest levels, and I can go into the streets at the lowest levels, and I'm received, and I have influence that helps to uplift, but not to my own merit. So I'm here to share, because a lot of people are asking questions on how. I'm here to share how we did it. I'm here to share how I'm doing it. Right. And so that we can go back, and now we can get our continent back, because our continent is not just going to save us. It's going to save the rest of humanity, because their world, you can see, you can't model that, as Sean said. If you model that, you doomed. We can't have another America. We can't afford another China. We need Africa, the original Africa, and so that we can save humanity. Maya Angelou said, while the world was developing technology, Africa was developing humans. And that's what we need. That's what I'm here to share, so that we can reason on how we did it.
Great. Thank you so much, Brother Uriah. Thank you so much. Aloysius.
Again, thank you, Sana. Thank you for inviting me over. Thank you, the rest of the people, the panel, for hearing me out. Thank you for the audience for coming. I'm going to keep it short. I believe in starting where you're at. I do believe in starting where you're at, and have a microscopic about what you want out of life, and we want to unite. You want to unite. And I have something called I, me, we, who I am, what's in it for me, and how we can work together. I mean, those three things, when you come together, it comes and build unity together. And because we have an understanding, yes, you're going to have disagreements. Yes, you're going to have different ideas, but each individual, if they understand who they are, that means kind of taking time to self-reflect, looking for information, asking questions. It's okay to ask questions, to seek, to be wrong, to be right sometimes. It's okay. And then understanding what's in it for you, because you're more passionate to find yourself in a position to do things when you know you have a purpose for that. And I think that's sometimes we lose ourselves because we forget what is our purpose in life. And this building about the Pan-African greatness of each other, that should be a purpose, and what you're is in it for you, and then what individual talents that somebody has, and work together. What we can do together. I say let's start where you at. Start where you at, and then go from there. And then we can continue to have this conversation, and it will grow better and better and better, and then great things will come from it.
Thank you so much, brother Aloysius. Natalia, please.
Thank you so much, Senna, for having me on this show. Thank you, the panelists. It was great talking with y'all, learning from y'all, and actually bringing everything on the table. I love this. I definitely love this. Just want to kind of quote something that I heard a Rastafarian said one time. He said, us as Black people, we need to unlearn to relearn and stop looking at his story and start making our story. Because if we keep reading his story, we will always be in the dark because it's not ours. So I love this platform because we get to share our story. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I think I have a preference here in terms of all the remarks. I'll take Natalia's because she gave the platform a lot of props, so I'm gonna be biased. But no, I was just joking. This has been very informative, very refreshing, and anytime we're able to do this, I think that we touch lives, we impact on people, and so thank you all for making time to come to be a blessing on others and being a blessing in our community. We're looking forward to the next conversation, and I would just want to say this: that this is why we do the exchange ceremony. This is why the Progressive Mind Show does what we do. And the exchange ceremony is all about this. So it's a 3-day event. Is coming this June 22nd, from June 20th, 21st, and 22nd. The 20th is going to be something like this, a panel discussion from we're going to have experts that are going to talk about our history, our culture, and how we have been affected by slavery and colonialism on both sides. It does not matter where the boat dropped you off of, but on both sides, even Africans on the continent. And then the next day, we'll have a business meeting. One thing that Africans have not done, or Black people have not done among ourselves a lot, is to do commerce. Everybody else is doing business with Africa on the continent, except our own brothers and sisters who love the shores. So we need to encourage that. So on the 21st, we're going to do a business meeting. And then the 22nd is a culmination where Africans or Black people are going to come together. And you all shared something very powerful. One thing that three things that run through all Black people, anywhere you see us, whether it's in Australia, America, UK, it does not matter, or Africa or in America. One thing you see Black people, you always see with Black people is the way we dance, the way we move. Like Natalia is one of the guys we're sharing. Our food and our fashion is so much in us. You always find these three elements, among other things, running through Black culture everywhere. So we come together every year to celebrate these three things. And then we also honor people who have excelled in our community. But our honor is what we call restoring the royalty of the African American, and those who left the shores must be restored. We must bring the culture back. Africans must reach out. Restitution must start with Africans. So come June 22nd, here in Chicago, we're bringing the diaspora together, regardless of where you are. Folks are coming from Africa, South America. We are convergent in Chicago to celebrate our cultures together, so we can begin to understand how connected we are and show the next generation how rich our culture and our royalty is. So join us June 22nd. If you can make the 3 days, even more powerful. On that note, this has been your host, Senna, aka Alinko. My great gratitude to my guest this evening, Sean Watson, Uri, Natalia Stevenson, and Aloysius. Thank you all so much for coming and making this show a success. And I'll take this last comment. Thank you guys for spending your evening discussing this important topic. May Mauga bless you all. Mauga in the Ewe language simply means the great God. May the great God bless you all. Now, that being said, love you guys, and let's make the next one another important conversation. Remember, we have now touched on a lot of things, some of the cultures, of the cultural nuances within the African-American culture, the Caribbean and African. We have not touched on these things. So next week, make a date with us. Stay tuned to the Progressive Mind Show. Keep the conversations going. And remember, to whom much is given, much is required. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.